all product, faced with hard luck. Faced with hard luck. Card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck. Pimps and card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck. We all product, faced with hard luck. Faced with hard luck. Card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck. Pimps and card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck.
All right.
All right.
Welcome to the Hard Luck Show. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's Big Lux. And if you like the Hard Luck Show, remember, hit that like and then hit that subscribe.
Yeah.
Sitting across from me is my co-host.
Is Chumahan Bowen, American Indian, Southern Californian, elegant barbarian, and lawyer man, here with you guys once again.
Yeah, straight looking like Steve Perry today over here.
Yeah, I didn't know
like,
braids, man.
no
Shit's
braids,
out. Let's
shit's
go.
out,
Oh,
bro.
Sherry.
1984.
Oh, Sherry.
All right, we got Salmon and we've got Big Pick Mike in the house, handling visuals, audios, everything. And old Sleepyhead Blue Eyes is not here.
He's DJing
And
at
we
like
are
his.
paying the price for it. God damn it. Huh?
He's DJing at
Yeah,
his kid's bar mitzvah or
right,
something.
yeah,
I don't know what he's
yeah,
doing.
yeah.
Something like that.
I want to welcome everybody. To the show, and we have a special guest today. You know, our guest wrote a book. I got to be honest with you guys. I've gotten to glance. Chumahan was able to jump on this.
Yeah.
Really, really, really interesting stuff. And we are going to bring him on the show. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about a lot. Robert, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Wait,
Gracias.
Can I see that book real quick?
Yes.
And let's give him the appropriate platitudes and plugs,
yeah.
right?
Do that, please.
Divide and Conquer Race, Gangs, Identity, and Conflict, right? By Robert D. How do you pronounce that? Weide?
The proper Prussian pronunciation is Weide.
Weide?
The W is pronounced as a V, yeah.
Man, I see a W and an E and a D. I say weed, but okay, Weide. I got you.
Weide.
That's cool.
Weide. All right, Robert Weide. And on the cover's dope, right? It's an awesome street art or whatever. Looks like a Chicano and a brother shaking hands, right? Soul Brother number one.
Right, yep.
So
Hold that up to the camera.
Yeah.
Let them see that.
look at this right here.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Great cover.
Yeah.
Excellent cover, right?
Great, excellent cover. Looks
Big
dope.
Lux approved.
Yep.
Right?
As soon as I walked in, first thing that grabbed me. And you know what? That would grab me in a bookstore, even if I was completely separated from this and I just saw that walking by.
Right.
Especially the title name. You know,
Yeah.
because I got a little bit of identification with that, you know?
Yeah.
I've been some places where they're winning if they keep us separated and divided.
For
you know?
sure.
Right.
Yeah, man. So,
Well, I think the first question.
I gotta have, you know what? I'm dealing with a couple of professors here. You know?
That's true.
I really am. And I know when I'm a little bit like, I want to get the story and I gotta, Chumahan, you're gonna drive on this because, you know, you're just such a great reader, literary fucking, you know. And I'm gonna let you kind of handle it with our amongst scholars. I got questions, but I'm gonna hold. I want to peel this back, and you can do that the way we need to.
All right, I appreciate that, Big Lux. Thank you very much. And so,
Formerly educated gents.
yes, right. So first, what drove you to write this book? How did this book come into existence?
So basically, when you're in grad school, right, to get a PhD, you have to do what's called a dissertation. You got to write, like, do some kind of research that nobody ever did before. So I'm in a sociology program. My PhD's from NYU. And I'm over there thinking like, well, what can I write about that nobody wrote about before? And especially at that time, there'd really not been too much written about Black and brown relations, you know, Latinos and African Americans. And certainly nothing about the street, you know. And I grew up actually right around the corner from where we are right now, here on the West Side. And when I was growing up, like in the late 80s, early 90s, racial beef was a big issue out here. You know, there were a lot of different neighborhoods on
Right.
Black and brown that were going at it, like in the late 80s and early 90s.
Right.
And, you know, people were getting killed behind that. And in 96, when I was like a senior in high school, a friend of mine got killed because of one of these beefs, a beef between 18 and Black P. Stones, Rolling 20s. Like the Bloods and 18 have beef out here on the West Side still to this day. So like that was something that kind of stuck with me as a kid. You know, when you're growing up, like a lot of people are getting killed. So we
But
didn't
what
really
is
think
it-
too much of it. But when I got older and I started doing all this reading, I started realizing like, damn, why do we even have beef in the first place? You know?
What did it do to you as a kid to have somebody you know or something like that die in an unnecessary way but not fully understand all the parameters? How does that impact a child?
Yeah, you know, we were so desensitized to it at that time that like we really didn't think anything of it. We'd be going to funerals like 2-3 times a month or something. Like it was crazy back then. So like it just seemed natural to us that people were getting killed and that, you know, we were getting shot at. And like who grew up going to house parties in the late 80s and early 90s, you know, HP and, you know, wherever, like every party we went to, there was a fucking shooting that ended in the party, you know? So it was just, you know, like I think collectively we had just like this collective trauma where we weren't even, you know, recognizing like our own humanity that people were dying around us, you know, and what that meant, you know.
Do you, and so first though, you talked about the PhD and the dissertation, right? In what field, what area is this PhD or dissertation in which you're studying?
Yeah, so my PhD is in sociology. Sociology is kind of like a wider field. And then there's kind of subfields within it that, you know, that affect this book, you know, race and ethnic
Sociology
studies.
is a wider field or a whiter field?
Both.
Right.
These obvious. Yeah. But there's like criminology,
Yeah.
ethnic studies, you know, all these different kind of subfields that, you know, and there's other fields that like I cite that I talk about, you know, like stuff from linguistics,
Sure.
stuff from anthropology, you know,
How
whatever.
did you get pulled in that direction in your higher education? Did you already know you were going to college? I mean, how did you get there?
You know, I always did well in school, in high school, but I'd always like ditch classes and, you know, all that kind of thing. So like, I think my high school GPA was a 3.0, but I did real well on the SATs. And back then you could get into college on that.
Yeah.
So I did, and I did well enough in college, you know, like I fucked off my first year and then like I did good after that, you know.
As one does.
And my plan was I'm going to go be a lawyer and get all the homies out of jail, you know.
All right.
That
okay.
was my original plan, right?
Break them out.
But at the time, like I was still like had my feet on both sides of the tracks, and you know I kind of felt like, you know, maybe eventually like I'm gonna end up catching a felony. So I was like, if I catch a felony, I go to law school, then I'm fucked, you know. So I thought, you know, I'm gonna go and do this PhD program and go, like, part of it is they give you money to live off of, not very much, but like enough to pay the rent.
Sure.
So go and live in New York for free for 5-6 years, cool, you know.
So you went and studied in New York?
Yeah, so my PhD is from NYU, so I was living in New York for about 6 years. Yeah,
Nice.
Like that.
Yeah.
Like it. We have a good friend that teaches over at NYU, right?
That's right.
Peter. Oh no, he's at Columbia.
Yeah, but he's out of New York a lot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Peter Conti, great, brilliant author himself.
Okay.
Obviously
Okay.
a genius creator.
But yeah, okay. NYU, that's fantastic, bro. I love it.
Yeah, and so what was it like going to
3,000
NYU?
miles away.
Being out of California, I
Fuck,
mean,
being pretty crazy,
walking
yeah.
everywhere and stuff.
What
Was
year-
that crazy?
What year is this? If you don't mind me
When did I go there? In 03, I think. Wow. 03, yeah.
asking. Wow, dude.
So he's
New York,
over there.
New York's like a different planet.
Right.
I feel more at home in Mexico than I do in New York. Like, you know,
Right. What's the-
coming from Los Angeles, you know?
Yeah, coming from Los Angeles, what are some
So-
things that stood out to you going to New York?
It's just, you know, New York is, there's
looking
just
for
so
us.
many fucking people. It's like a grind, you know, like all day long you're on the train, you're, you know, mashing everywhere. Like, even if you have a car, you just catch up tickets and like there's nowhere to park, and it's everything's a mission in New York. You know, you get on the train at the end of your day, you're like fucking nuts to butts, face to face. Like everybody, you look
Right.
at their face and everybody's face says the same thing. Fuck my life.
Yeah.
You know?
You don't see very much.
And
of
that was back then.
Yeah.
And that was back then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Homeless
that was
dudes grabbing your plate of rice and running off the subway.
Those throwing chicken wings on the
Yeah,
fucking subway. and shit.
rats as big as your
Or
ant.
maybe not running off.
All right, so you're over there. But sociology. But you thought what? You wanted to study
I wanted to
people?
study something that like had to do with like how I grew up, you know, like something about crime and just like the urban existence and shit, you know. And because sociology, the advice I got from my undergrad was do sociology because it's like a big field, and then that way you can apply for different jobs. You could apply for sociology, criminology, ethnic studies, whatever. And it was good, and it was good advice because I ended up getting a job. I'm a associate professor at Cal State LA,
Wow.
right here on the east side. So I'm lucky. I mean, part of the reason I got my job is because I had that sociology degree from that school. You know,
That's like
so.
usually a pretty good gig, academic professor gig.
Yeah,
right. Do you ever go on
it's rare.
sabbatical?
And to get a job like where you grew up, like most
Right.
people get a job in buttfuck Egypt in the middle of
Right.
Idaho or who knows where the
Right.
fuck.
Right.
You know? It's like the army. You don't choose
Did
where
you
you
get
go.
one of those corduroy jackets with the patches
Man,
on the
they
elbow?
still owe me that. They told me I was going to get
He's got to
one.
get one of
Comes with the job and a pipe.
Yeah, and a pipe, right.
Nice Hemingway.
Right, you don't have to comb your hair anymore when you become a professor. That's all
Or
out the
shave.
window. Right, that's it.
I'm losing it, so that'll be a moot point.
Yeah.
soon.
Okay, so
I was out there. I lived in New York. I went out to New York. I had to get away from some real heat out here. I went all the way out to New York. I was 19, 20. This is an 80, like 88, 89. And man, I lived in the city, worked in the city, and I didn't work far from where I lived. I lived in Midtown. I worked in Midtown, and I lived in like Kips Bay, Murray Hill, which is, and then Alphabet City. But I didn't spend too much time on the subways, but everything else, dude, and those rush hours at the end of the day when the streets are filled with people walking home from work.
Yeah.
Dude, man, it's
Everybody's pissed. Like,
yeah,
fuck,
they're,
I hate
yeah.
this.
It's on. You can feel it, dude. You can feel it, and that's part of the
tension,
fucking. You can feel it's part of what makes that city really loud and thick.
yeah.
But so different. So when you were telling me coming from here and just going straight out there to school, but at the same time, I found it exciting. I liked the change. There was a lot of movies about New York. There was a lot of things that I knew I wanted to go out there and see. Okay,
What's a great guy?
So let's go. Let's keep on going.
No. So all right. So you're like, fuck it. I'm gonna get my PhD, right? They're gonna start calling me Dr. Weide or whatever the fuck, right?
Right.
And you start. But how did you? I mean, when I was reading through the chapters of this, right? So
You're writing this in New York?
No, well, you have to write like a proposal and you have to like read a whole bunch of books and you write something when you're there.
Yeah.
But then all the research, all the interviews and all that, everything is here, So basically I came back here in 2009, something like that.
Oh yeah.
And then it takes a year or two, whatever, to get permission and to jump through all these hoops, and then you actually start interviewing people.
Yo, check this out, man. So, essentially, right, you're getting your PhD, so you got to propose to a bunch of eggheads. Right? This is what I'm going to do, right?
The dissertation?
Yeah, like all these other professors who made it past the horns of torture to not have to brush their hair and smoke a pipe.
Yeah.
He's got to be like, sirs, please, if I can.
And
Bim, bim,
ma'ams.
salabim, and ma'ams, right. Sirs, ma'ams, doesn't matter. All of it together, right? Trans, whatever. Oh, God bless you. Then he's got to go up there and say, I am planning to, right? You go up with a proposal.
Yeah.
And then they might, right? They go, he wants to write a book, does he? Right, what's it going to be on? How many, did you have to go back and forth a little bit to massage this in a direction that they would finally approve?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's like that, you're basically, you got to pick 3 to 5 people and you're at the mercy of them. Either it's like the Roman
Is this
emperors.
to write any
They're
book?
going to give you down or up.
So
Not like an academic book.
An academic
Yeah.
book.
So when they do the dissertation, it's a fancy word for essentially new research, right? New research. Dissertation really just means new research. So what happens is after you get through the bunglefuck of regular school, then getting jacked off and twerking everyone off in undergrad, and then you finally figure out what sex is about in your master's program, right? Before you can really become somebody that really knows shit, meaning doctor, PhD, you had to go to the Lords and you had to bow down and say, please, sir, I have an idea. I don't think anyone's ever done it before. What I want to do. Right.
Got it.
Okay. So you do all that, right? And at that point, you're at the spear tip of academia, meaning all the textbooks and all that other shit, you look behind the curtain and saw there's not really much behind there. In fact, most of it's all a bunch of theories, and it's probably bullshit. Old ass racist, sexist, political bullshit from 1950. So then Weide comes in and says, look, I'm going to inject some new blood, a new perspective, whatever. So they work with you a little bit, right? They fucking, say, well, it's this, it's that. And then he's, maybe goes through a few drafts of the proposal. Then they finally go, you have our blessing. Go with God, right?
That's how it works. Yeah, exactly.
And then he's like set to go, right? He's been approved, but still, it's wide open. And there's people. How long did it take you to finish your doctorate?
Fuck.
See,
I think 10 years, something like that. 11 years.
Hey, Dr. Auntie Sherry McGregor took her 10 years too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the average is like 7, but still.
Yeah, so he's on his own, and what winds up happening, and maybe this happened or didn't happen for you. But once you got the proposal and you started actually doing the research, meaning talking to people, reading the books, did your idea change?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Like if you look at my dissertation and the book, it's like a completely different analysis. For sure. And also like after I got my job, I started reading a whole bunch more shit that that nobody ever showed me in grad school.
Right.
And that made me think even, completely change the direction I was going with it for sure.
I gotta say, when I read the first chapter, for sure, I could see on some level the journey you went on a little bit, because you can kind of see where he name drops, checks what you're supposed to do in academia, because otherwise these fucking brittle motherfuckers will not even take you seriously. So you gotta be like, I did read that, I read that, right? I'm not on here on my own. So he name drops all the appropriate people, but actual people at the very end. And then he even says, I can't remember which guy it was, but he was like, and everyone sort of, kind of dances around the issue or has a different side. And I'm going to take the capitalism aspect and I'm just going to tweak it a little bit into my thing. So that's where you can start to see he's starting to say, okay, I agree with the general consensus about what the definition, because these eggheads argue about what capitalism is for like eons, and no one's come to a consensus. So he says, I'm going to take this and then I'm going to adjust it for my purposes here, right? Showing that he's grabbing hold of the thing and taking it in another direction, which is what this book does and why this book is so useful and helpful. Honestly, and this is no bullshit, and Big Mike, I'm saying
I'm starting as soon as possible.
All I'm saying is that if you read this book, right, it might take you 3 months to get through it for real, but you'll have gained probably about 15 years of serious academic research in 3 months because of what this guy did. He went through and mapped it all out. And so one of the things that I thought was powerful was he said, what is capitalism? Right? We all fucking say this shit all day, right? But what the fuck is it? Professor, what the fuck is capitalism? From your perspective.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, there's, a lot of disagreement in the field about all of these things, like, I mentioned in the book, the 3 pillars, right?
Yeah.
Of our civilization. Now, a lot of people focus on colonialism and slavery as the defining, kind of like foundations of our society.
Right.
But colonialism and slavery are as old as sedentary agriculture, right?
Are you getting this?
So there's nothing new about colonialism or slavery, right?
Right. Ancient Greeks were doing colonialism. Ancient Romans had slavery.
Define colonialism then.
Go ahead, my friend. Why does it have the word colon in it?
When people from one place get up and go and settle down in someone else's place. That's colonialism, basically.
They invade.
So that's happened throughout history.
Right. It's like cultural appropriation.
Like enlarging their land mass?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And they set up shop and they start co-opting all the shit over there. And maybe they take advantage of the different rates of exchange, money's different, or labor's
different, yeah.
Or you could even say, right, and it's usually colonialism is for the profit of the home country or the owners of the master class at the home. They're not trying to. That's why they sent people to the Americas. That's why the Brits sent people to the Americas. We're trying to fucking make some coin here. Send these motherfuckers over. It's a business endeavor.
Right.
But
but for me, the 3 pillars are capitalism, the race concept, and nationalism,
Right.
in that order. And so I make this argument that the one comes from the other, that they emerge because of each other.
Right.
And the first one is capitalism, right? And capitalism is a system that's never existed in human history prior to about 500 years ago.
All right, stop right there. Okay, so Big Lux or Matt or me or whoever, what just generally when someone says capitalism, just on a common sense level, what does it feel like they're talking about?
Making money.
Okay, take that and explain how it's not just that or whatever.
I mean, money has been made throughout history, right? But
Yes.
how is the money made, right? So through most of history, the way wealthy people, the ruling class in whatever country would make money is people would go out and work and, and they would kind of skim off the top.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So a certain amount of produce would be needed to reproduce the population.
Right.
So there'd be another generation of workers the following, and whatever was extra that they could take off, they would take that off. If they take too much, then maybe the people rebel,
Right.
But, there's this kind of throughout history. Or you could go and conquer new lands and then take their wealth, and that would increase your wealth.
Right.
So what capitalism changes is it came out of this thing we call the enclosure movement, right?
Right.
Which we really focus in the south of England, but also, near the same time was also going on in the Netherlands, and actually Marx even in Capital Volume 1 says, mentions
You hear that?
in Italy, there was that there was some of this was going on. But what is it
You hear how
that
he
Marxist.
said capital, right?
Capital,
That's academia. That's real bona fide academia.
So basically, what is that? What's the enclosure movement? Is when they enclose the land. So prior to this, most of the human population, wherever you go in the world, wherever people live, they produce the food that they eat. They produce almost everything they consume and use. Only the only things that would come from far away were things that were luxury items, right? So people were born onto land, and they would be able to, whether by
Live off
farming,
the land.
live off the land, basically, right?
So check this out. So, right? I mean, it's really hard. This country's done an excellent job of hiding this concept from the American people.
Oh, let him finish.
Wait,
Let
no,
this guy
I'm
finish.
I'm gonna let him
Okay.
finish, but let me help broaden this out so we can grab hold of this. But the issue is this, right? When William the Conqueror came to England, before he came there, the king had set up a system that had been there for how long? Like 1,000 years or whatever it was, where the people working the land had common areas, also known as wasteland, technically. And what this was where people could grow their crops, poor people, peasants, homeless, like you would think like we have out here, they were able to do all of that. And there was common areas set up for that specifically. When he says there's an enclosure movement, there was an intentional design to shut down all those commons. That's why communism is called communism. It's the general wealth or land that belongs to the people. And here in California, a legacy of that concept is the idea that everyone has access to the beach. So nobody who has private property can deny a citizen access to the beach because the ocean is a common, just like it was in England. Sorry, please.
Yeah.
I don't mean to
But other than the beach, the whole rest of the fucking world has been fenced off, basically. And that's what the enclosure, they enclose the land. So the way this starts anywhere in the world, in England, whatever, and spreads through the world is they build fences. And everybody that was living in that area, they say, vale verga, sorry, you got to take a hike,
Right.
And then so part of it is those people lose their livelihood of being able to support themselves off the land.
Right.
But then what happens to those people? How can they survive?
Right.
They have two options. They can work for a wage,
Right.
which most of us do, or they can rob and steal.
Which
right?
they were doing.
Which they would do, yeah.
What year in England are you thinking?
This is like the 16th century.
Which means 1700s.
1500s.
1500s, right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, so they create this population of landless peasants.
Right.
And so what do they fence off the land in order for people to be able, this is why it differs from previous ways of making money, is they're trying to maximize the amount of money that can be made from the land they already have.
Right.
Instead of going out and conquering new land, right? You live in England, it's an island. All the land's already been divvied up by the
Limited.
queen.
Yep.
Right. So people have to take the land that they have and make it produce more. So they lease it out to somebody. And that person says, "Oh, I'll give me this land. I'll give you 100 bushels of wheat at the end." Maybe they make 200. They get to keep the profit.
Right.
Who's going to farm the bushels? Well, there's all these landless peasants that just got kicked off the land. I'll pay them a couple of bushels and have them do the actual work. And then boom, I walk away with all that profit.
Right.
Right. So that starts happening. It happens throughout England. It happens throughout Western Europe. It starts happening in the colony. That's essentially what colonies are, is taking the indigenous people off of their land, whether that's in the Americas, in Africa, in Asia, whatever, and closing everything to capitalism, making every common land that people would be able to support themselves into private land, private property.
Right.
And forcing everybody now, like, think of most of the world's population has to work for a wage in order to survive.
Because
How many people could support themselves? Like, if you stop working, if money disappeared, what would you do? How would you eat?
Because they don't have a means to be self-sufficient without having to get a fucking bum-ass job.
Exactly.
Right.
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 So that's really the key part of capitalism, is that it creates this population. The enclosure creates this population of people,
Right.
us, who have no choice but to work to make money.
Right.
Right.
And so now you have this sort of huge mass of people, right, that are landless and going to these urban centers. And this starts to happen right as they start developing this whole factory process, right? Now it's like steam presses and making matches and all this bullshit starts to happen. And people, if you had like your own little acre, and you could raise your family, Big Lux.
But 1,000 years ago, wherever you popped up on the planet, right? Wherever legs you shot out from, that was where you lived, right?
Right.
You go into the backyard and we're growing this and we caught some motherfucking and nobody was saying anything.
Well, so
and now it's you're born. Now when you pop out of them legs, you're already into design.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
That's right.
You got to go to school, preschool at 5.
Yep.
You got to do good in kindergarten. You got to do good and get your grades so you can get a job. All of it is built in.
That's right.
There was no thought of, fuck all this. I'm going to lay down. I'm going to grow my vegetables. I'm going to eat. I'm going to sleep when I want.
Yes.
I'm going to watch the sun, do what I want. No.
That's exactly right.
You ain't going to put your fucking ass down anywhere.
So now you can see why, not only because...
But this goes back to, let me just say this.
Go ahead.
This goes back to the big problem that I have with all of it.
Go ahead.
And that's that things that are inherently ours as a human being. A roof over your head,
Right.
your medical attention needs,
Right.
your food,
Right. Yep.
And like you said, you don't just go fucking give it to them. You set it. There's enough resources to set up. We could go anywhere and clean out water, teach them how to fucking grow oranges,
1,000%.
all of it. And it's only due to the pigs in this planet, and a lot of what we're talking about have now hogged it. We're not using our planes or ships to go bring fresh fruit, clean water, plumbing, access all over the world, but yet we have access now. We built planes. We have a way to get it. But it's all that, man, like the common shit. So I like what you're saying, man, because you're really peeling it back in a way.
Right.
Well, you're helping to show us. I mean, it's an awesome new perspective where you didn't even have a choice. Your parents didn't have a choice, and your grandparents didn't have a choice.
Well, so this has echoes, because then when you get gentrification, that's setting up. So when people say, I'm from Santa Monica, I was here. No one liked that house that was right there, right? This whole system is set up so that rich people can come in and dislodge you from your heritage. That's what this is doing. And this is why the Indians had to be pushed off their land. The Indians, every step of the way, we said, look, all right, fine, New York, you got it. All right, fine, fuck it. You want the card? Have the card. Okay, from here, this line, right here, Black Hills. All right, motherfucker? Black Hills over. That's our land, and we don't want what you got. We don't want your headache. We don't want your fucking ball lights. We don't want none of that shit, okay? We want to hunt. We want to be human. We want to just do our thing.
Self-sufficient.
Whatever. Right.
Yeah.
We know how to live off the land. Wasn't good enough. They couldn't have another system like that because the poor people stuck on this side.
You were like, everything he's talking about is directly comes down to like everything that happened in the United States.
1,000%, right? And so how does that lead into race?
So think about it like this. Think about it from, we're thinking about it from the peasant's perspective, from the worker's perspective, right?
Right.
think about it from the fat cat's perspective, right? The people who are making the profit, the ruling class, the oligarchy, whatever you want to call them, right?
Yeah.
They have a problem. There's not very many of them, and there's a whole lot of people that don't have much at stake in this system where we're basically getting peeled like a fucking potato. So what's to keep all of us from taking pitchforks and torches and AR-15s and just fucking running them down?
Right.
Right? And just pillaging their shit.
Well,
right?
I ask you, Professor, how can we get all those people to turn to AR-15s on themselves?
So that's where the divide and conquer comes in, right? What's the vehicle to keep these people from forming like Voltron and coming after us, right? So is to divide them. And so there's many different, boundaries of division within our society and in the world, but within the US, certainly the most important one is race, right? The race concept divides us from one another.
100.
And like capitalism, the race concept is not something that's existed forever. Right? It has a very similar trajectory.
When you say that, I can almost feel in the room, it's hard for us to understand that race did not exist forever. I think it's so hard for Americans to imagine, wait, what are you saying? You're saying that in Europe in 1200, they didn't see a black guy? Of course he was black, right? How does that work out?
There's a famous sociologist who had a good way of putting it, saying that, ancient and medieval peoples weren't blind. They could see that people look different from different latitudes and different regions of the world, but it didn't have the same social meaning, right? It didn't carry with it consequences that shape the outcome of your life the way it does in our society, right? It didn't have the same function of dividing people. It was just, there's different people here and different people there. And, people could mix and people did mix. And, the human species is a migratory species. Totally. So the idea that any of us is from anywhere on Earth, we're just basically arbitrarily picking a point in time and saying, oh, that's my origin. But actually your people came from, we're all from Africa.
We're all connected.
But we're not even one species. We're a combination of at least half a dozen different hominid species from different parts of the world. Like Denisovans.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they're finding species of humans that we don't have a physical specimen of that they're identifying from genetic analysis.
Right. They're looking at all this mitochondria.
Not only are we not discrete races, we're not even a discrete species.
1000%.
So why does race seem so important to us? Because we live in a society where race determines so much about our lives and has us all convinced that we're all different from one another. Yeah. And as a result of that we have different interests.
There was a couple of qualities in your book that you pointed out that what race does is it convinces people of certain qualities that you have inherently, right? Yeah. And I was trying to think about what that was. I mean, on a social level, it limits you or predetermines sort of what track you're going to take, right? I mean, is anyone surprised that in the 21st century, that all of the people that are running the biggest communication and distribution technology companies are all white male? That's not an accident.
And the banks and the government.
And the banks. Warren Buffett, right? I mean, what the fuck? So, and the other things too, though, right? These races, we've created an ideology with racism that also goes down to the root level character or personalities of people.
Well, my argument is that, so for the majority of the field, people feel that, race exists in order to advantage white people. Right. And why does race exist? Because white people are fucked up. Right. And so from my perspective, that perspective actually kind of functions to divide us.
Right.
Right. Are we supposed to hate, are all white people rich? Do all white people run banks? Have all white people oppressed me? Do I have white people that are homies? Like, should I hate all white people? Who are my real enemies? Right.
Right.
But our real enemies are the people at the top. Right. Where most of them are white. But there's some,
Clarence Thomas.
Yeah, is Clarence Thomas your homeboy?
Right. Is he down with the cause?
Yeah,
right.
So, and that's the problem with identity politics, is it makes us associate ourselves with people on the basis of race or whatever other identity, as opposed to what our actual material experience is.
So how do we get, because I agree with you, man.
Yeah, how do we get out of that?
So I agree with you, because I think the Black Panthers were crossing race lines in terms of trying to develop a better community. People say that Martin Luther King was assassinated when he started opening up to poor white workers as well, right? So as soon as someone starts getting pan-race and trying to bring poor people, regardless of their background, together, that's when they become dangerous. So how do we today, what's your thought on how we do that?
Well, let's talk about that historically too. That's essentially what COINTELPRO was.
Right.
Think of many of the people who were, not just people who were oppressed and run out of the country and stuck with fake cases and put in prison for decades and all that. But look at the people who were killed, that were assassinated by this counterinsurgency program on the streets and in prison, right? What were they saying about identity politics?
Right.
Right. Look at, right here in Los Angeles, the president and the vice president of the Black Panthers were assassinated. Alprentice Bunchy Carter and John Huggins.
Yep.
Bunchy Carter wasn't just the president of the Black Panthers. He was also the president of the Slawsons, which was the biggest African-American hood in Los Angeles. So this is pre-Crip and Blood era. And all these different dudes from different hoods, the Slawsons, the Gladiators, the businessmen, the Avenues, they all came together around the Black Panther. Right, around being Black Panthers. So like during that time, gangbanging like pretty much stopped. Like people stopped fighting across gang lines because they were all coming together, forming like Voltron. And Bunchy Carter, and then there was this other group, which many people believe was, basically a front group for the FBI, called the US organization. Right. The Panthers would clown them and call them the United Slaves.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And they were headed by this dude named Ron Karenga, who's still around. He's actually a professor at Cal State Long Beach. You can take a class with him.
Oh, shit.
To his credit, there's no paperwork that proves that he worked, with the government and stuff like that. But there have been many accusations over the years. And there are people that were members of his organization, including the people who were involved in the Bunchy Carter assassination, which happened at UCLA in Campbell Hall. There is evidence that they were actually working for the FBI.
Right.
Right. So what was this meeting that they had at UCLA? What was the topic of conversation? Right. Yeah. I actually got this from this famous geographer, Ruth Wilson Gilmore. She wrote that book, Golden Gulag. Right. And
I read
John Huggins was her cousin. Yo, small world, right?
Right.
And she told me this, that actually the topic of the debate where this shooting happened is the Panthers were saying, look, racism is obviously an issue, but it's because of capitalism and we need to connect the two. And the other faction, the US organization, were saying, no, capitalism is not the issue, race is the issue. Right. They're what's called cultural nationalists, right?
Right.
So there was this friction between them, and Bunchy Carter and John Huggins were basically assassinated by these people who were pushing this cultural nationalism.
Right. And so the FBI's running COINTELPRO, this covert organizations, and they're like internal CIA. CIA goes over and does the same shit with all our enemies, right? FBI is to do that internally. And it's interesting because the FBI not only goes after, quote unquote, groups of color that are doing similar things, but they also fan the flames of these Christian white nationalists too. They keep an eye on them enough to rein them in or look like they're cracking down, but they also are pushing them. So it is true what you're saying. All of these cultural nationalists, that is, people who, believe in their whatever, their racial identity is so powerful or whatever, it's kept alive enough to keep it divided, but it's never completely shut down. And what it seems like is going on regularly is just a stopping of a real honest conversation about, hey, how is this economic system actually fomenting or supporting or pushing this, right?
Yeah. And it's, who knows what the fuck is going on now? Like this COINTELPRO shit never stopped, obviously.
Right.
Counterinsurgency is the government's job.
Right.
Right. So, but in fact, the only reason we know COINTELPRO happened is because some anti-war activists broke into the federal building and found the FBI office and found all these COINTELPRO files and said, hey, this would be cool. Let's take this shit with us. They were there to burn draft cards,
Right.
And then that shit ended up getting disseminated to the media. It came out. And actually what was in those documents that they stole was the proof that Fred Hampton's assassination was orchestrated by the FBI.
Right.
And what was Fred Hampton saying about cultural nationalism literally the month before he died. The last recorded speech we have of his, which was given, I believe it's in the book, I believe at Northern Illinois University.
Yep.
In November of 1969. He was assassinated in December of 1969. In that speech, he's just blasting cultural nationalism. He blasts Karenga. He blasts Stokely Carmichael.
Right.
He's saying, like he said, freedom doesn't come from the sleeve of a dashiki, those outfits that they wear.
Yeah.
Freedom comes from the barrel of a gun. Like we need to get some Colt 45s and some 9mm and this and that. Like if I change my name from Fred Hampton to Ooga Booga, I'm still going to be Ooga Booga under fascism.
Right.
The only difference is instead of being Fred under fascism, I'm going to be Ooga Booga under fascism. Ain't nothing fucking changed. Right. So it's the fascism that we need to attack.
In reading about the Black Panthers, one of the things that Bobby Seale and them, what they were really good at doing was organizing the rage of the inner African Americans into a military force. And the whole point was, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the civil rights, trying to do anti-Jim Crow stuff, is not to take away from it, but it reached its apex when they started killing people. Like at a certain point when Malcolm X is assassinated, everybody who tried to do it the right way, the nice way, the let's just everybody kumbaya this thing, said, fuck that, it's not working. And then they said, you know what? We don't have land, right? We don't have money. But what we do have is a lot of pissed off motherfuckers. And if we can organize a military, right, then they'll have to give us what we are asking for. And that's what they did.
And and we need to reach across racial lines to work together and create like a guerrilla army, basically, to oppose the American ruling class. You know who was talking about that?
Who?
George Jackson. George Jackson, the founder of the Black Guerrilla Family.
Right.
This is read his books, right? His collections of writings. This is what he was like envisioning what would have to happen in order for there to be a revolution. And what happened to George Jackson? They shot him dead in San Quentin prison.
That's right. They created, that's the story about the gentleman where they framed up, right? That he had a gun or he was trying to do something.
They're saying that he and this is the most racist shit ever, right? They're saying that he smuggled, and this is a big ass pistol. It's this Italian 9mm pistol. This thing's like not concealable, right? They said that he smuggled it in his afro.
In his afro, that's right.
Only who's going to believe this shit, right?
Right. Into San Quentin, and they killed him.
Yeah, so supposedly he smuggled a gun in there and took over the cell block. And so the details are, it's not sure exactly what happened. They did take over the cell block.
Right.
And then like him and another dude made a run for it.
That's right.
And they smoked him, and the other dude's name is Johnny Spain. They let Spain surrender. And, so basically he died, but where was he running to? There's nowhere to escape. I think really, or, a lot of people think that really what was happening is they were about to kill him and he felt it coming and he flipped it on them and managed to take over control of the housing unit. And then that's where it went from there.
So how do you read the current political situation that we see ourselves right now? Because some of the things you're talking about, I can see are openly out. And then it seems like the so-called middle America is kind of against it. How are you reading Trump? How are you reading Biden? How are you seeing this political context?
Yeah, I mean, Trump is just resurgence of white nationalism.
Right.
It's just that's identity politics too. Like I say in my book, white supremacy was the first identity politics.
Right.
The rest of them are just copying off of white supremacy and flipping the categories.
Right.
So, Trump is, and white people, especially like, think of not just white people of every color. People think of like all of us of this generation.
Yeah.
In the 70s, deindustrialization started happening.
That's right.
So think about what your grandparents did for a living.
Right.
Do those jobs even exist anymore?
No.
Right? Like, so we're basically trying to survive when the manufacturing base in this country has been removed first south of the border and now to Asia.
That's right.
Right? So like that's an issue for people of color, of course, because they're disproportionately unemployed.
Right.
But also think about it from the perspective of the white working class who, generation after generation, their future was assured.
Well,
and
isn't
now
it like
suddenly it's not.
another, what you're saying?
So it's like a lot of
almost,
anxiety,
Yeah, but it almost seems like what you're talking about, what they've done with our land, and the food and the capabilities of us
Yeah.
trying to sustain ourselves.
Yeah.
If you move it back by them sending all the jobs elsewhere,
Yeah.
now you're even furtherly removed. You get what I'm
Totally.
saying?
No, I
Exactly.
get it. You're saying like there was some middle America aspect where, okay, I don't own the land, but I've got to secure.
Yeah,
Enough
right.
jobs.
Now,
And
all
now
that-
that's gone.
gone.
You're 100% right.
So that's what Marx calls surplus labor population. This is also
how do you
from
put that in street words?
Volume 1 of Das
How would you-
Kapital.
Yeah, Das
So
Kapital.
So surplus labor population is, the most base form of it is the unemployed.
Yeah.
If you're unemployed, you don't have a stake in the labor market, but it's also people who are underemployed,
Right.
people who are, employed in the black market economy. Like think of how many people do you know that actually like are taking food out of the ground, extracting resources from the earth, manufacturing the goods we consume. Like none of us do any of that anymore in this country.
Not at all.
Most of the jobs in this country are service jobs, right? Or people like side hustle type of shit, right? So,
I think that's one of
How
the-
many fast food places can you have, right? We're
Right,
talking about
exactly.
that. Everything's in fucking Starbucks and a motherfucking El Pollo Loco.
And how does everybody feel that we're
7-Eleven.
all in this situation? Like, goddamn, like where there's no future for us anymore.
Right.
So it's of course, white people have anxiety about their futures, but everybody does. So you have this whole population of people in this country who are who see their future slipping down the drain.
Right.
And people like Trump come in and say, oh, let's make America great again. And, all that kind of shit.
promises all that.
So it's basically like, let's steer them off and then we'll just steer them against each other.
You know what's weird though? It's like I see that, but then I also see Biden as like, I almost see Trump as a threat for everyone to go back to, well, let's just kick the can down the road again. Let's not make any major changes because we got to fight off this devil. If we fight off that devil, and that it's a way of like getting people to not maybe look more towards a Bernie Sanders or something like that and say, wait a minute, the whole thing's
They tell
fucking
us
broken.
The only way to keep Trump from becoming dictator is just to have a Democrat be president forever.
Right.
Is that
and
a
that's-
dictatorship too? Like, yo.
Yeah,
It
it's
was.
either one.
From
Either
my
one,
view,
either
it's
one.
two sides of the same coin. I don't vote personally because I don't negotiate with terrorists.
Right.
Like if the way I see it, whatever the U.S. government's going to do, whoever's in charge is not going to be in my interest and is probably going to hurt a whole lot of people,
Yeah, but
put a
so-
whole lot of people in prison and bomb a whole lot of fucking people.
Well, but-
I ain't signing off on that.
So then how? I mean, listen, how are we going to get our AR-15s? What are you going to do, Colonel? Come on, are you going to lead the army?
Do you even own an AR-15?
I can't
That's
say
the first
if I
step.
do. Well, I can tell you this: I got 22 guns at home.
There
I
you
do.
go. So you're ready.
I'm ready,
Yeah.
but we
Boy
need.
Scouts motto: be prepared.
I mean, fuck.
They
it.
didn't know how
I
serious
ain't
I
down
was
with it,
gonna
boy.
take
I don't go out in the woods with no dudes that like wear shorts. I'm not down with that. But I don't know. He wants me to
Bunch
wear a
of 40-year-old
handkerchief.
guys
Yeah,
walking with
he's
the
gonna give me a
12-year-old.
badge. Yeah, I'll fuck that. But no, seriously. So, is there an organization or is there a place that we can look that you know of where we can start organizing or thinking about?
So think of like how would imagine if there was a rebellion in this country, right?
Yeah.
Who would be the people that would be how would the rebellion be organized, right?
Probably with cookies
if,
gear.
if you look historically at other revolutions that have occurred,
Yeah.
for example, in the Spanish Revolution,
Yeah.
there was already unions. There was an anarchist trade union. There was a
Yeah.
socialist trade union, right? And like the anarchist trade union had over 1 million members at the time, the CNT, Confederación Nacional Trabajo. And the socialist trade union, the UGT, the Union General Trabajo, they had almost 500,000 members. So basically all those card-carrying union members just said, when the coup d'etat kicked off, they just all went and found a gun, and then they all fucking charged the army barracks and surrounded the army barracks and literally stormed the army barracks, took out all the army soldiers, made them fucking killed whoever wouldn't surrender, and took over the city of Barcelona and all of Catalonia and Saragossa and Aragon. Like literally working people just took up guns, ran all the rich people off, and opened up all the prisons. In Catalonia, they opened up the prisons and they told them, listen, we're fighting this war against these fascists, Francisco Franco and all this, right? You can go free, go live your life, or you could pick up a rifle and come fight these fascists with us. 90% of them said, give me the rifle.
Fuck.
Now here the union movement in this country is pretty
Broken,
crushed and is co-opted,
Right.
Because it's a closed shop union model, right?
Yeah.
I could talk about that in a separate issue.
Yeah.
But so unions maybe aren't a vehicle for this, right? But
Right.
what is in every neighborhood that's already armed and already part of our communities and is already organized?
The cops?
Gangs.
Oh.
Tell me one neighborhood that doesn't have a fucking gang already organized, that's already armed, that's already willing to like go to jail and doesn't give a fuck.
Okay, I like that.
What does it take to like make all those people realize like why the fuck are we killing each other?
How do we do that?
And like when are poor people going to stop killing poor people and start killing rich people?
Big Lux,
Right? What will make people have that epiphany?
From your experience, just knowing people or whatever, what do you think would be a way that we could get people who believe in justice and understand loyalty? How could we get them to maybe turn the guns on the rich fucks?
Well, first off, we've been ongoing discussion about organizing. We have a whole big thing, Chuman's. People don't know how to organize. People don't know how to organize to get things moving. So what we were shooting for first, everybody's going to fucking not go to Dodger Stadium, right?
Right.
Then they'll bring down the price of those hot dogs and start giving you a gift when you go in there.
Yeah, $24 for a michelada. Come on.
So everybody don't go to a Dodger game, leave that place empty.
Yeah.
They'll change their prices. One day is all it takes. But listen, the other thing I do want to say, Chuman, because I didn't want to interrupt you guys a lot. I've said it numerous times on this show. I don't personally, and I've not done the investigation you have done, nor Chuman, but I don't know about things really changing at the level that we need to even start scratching at in this country. I haven't seen anywhere in history myself where there wasn't blood. Like
in the streets.
In the streets, bro.
Yeah,
on your hands. Like people have to die. That's kind of how I think almost humans in a lot of ways, or they've grown to become, that they just don't sensibly, there's just a percentage of them that they ain't just gonna listen. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, that's true.
They gotta, every now and then, somebody needs an ass whooping. That's the best way to humble your ass. You need to get fucking chin checked. And I think like the world, I don't know that we're going to change until there is blood on the streets. That just seems to be the only way people get their liberties.
Yeah, the problem is like the title of the book, Divide and Conquer.
Yeah.
We've all been divided. All of the surplus labor population, all of the people who should be able to support themselves and aren't, and are basically trying to deal with the frustration of that, they're all fighting each other.
Yeah.
Crips and Bloods and Southsiders and Norteños, and you're from this hood and he's from that hood, and all this,
Fucking
crews and all this politics
of
is what? Is everybody fighting each other for what?
For what?
For what? What does anybody gain from out of that? You know what I mean? Like our lives just continue generation after generation. People go to prison forever. People die. And for what? And how does that change our circumstances? It doesn't. Right?
It doesn't.
But that's the thing is, it's not an accident that we're at each other's throats, right? All of this counterinsurgency project has been used to turn us against each other. Anytime someone tries to intervene in that and create a revolutionary movement, what happens to them?
They
either get killed or they end up in prison for the rest of their lives.
So based on that, based on what you're saying, I almost think you're going to need a wholesale change in the education. From the beginning.
That's the first step, right? Is to make people realize that they could have freedom. Because like Lux said, like, I don't see it either. Like, do you see, the blood in people's eyes that people are ready to like take their freedom back? I don't.
Nah, hell no, man. Because you got all these people that are fucking just scared. I think fear's the root of this shit. I think. I don't want to lose my job.
Well,
I don't want to maybe not get a frappuccino. Oh, what if the police put me in handcuffs? What if I lose my job? But they're scared because they've been conditioned that way. Their parents, they're like, that's at the end of the day, they're gonna be out on the street with nothing. Is the fear?
That's the fear. Yeah,
right.
That's right.
That's the fear that you're going to.
I'm one step ahead of nothing right now, and I don't want to lose that position.
And also, you know what, man? And also, no trust. Because
there's no trust, there's no faith, there's no nothing.
You think like if I finally speak up, and I go marching out there, No one's gonna be behind me. One of the things they got in France, right? They've been protesting now for like
look
what,
Yeah,
2
dude,
months,
they're
3 months.
kicking
France,
shit
yo.
But you know what they do? They got a
Shout out.
system. People are fucking paying people who are not going to work food and all this other shit to keep them up. In the United States, we don't have that.
Yeah, that's what we
know what's
need.
crazy?
That is what we need.
You know what set off all this shit in France?
2 years.
They want to change the retirement age from 62 to 64.
And that sent them
I
fucking...
got-
that's
I
still
the
less
plan.
than
I
us.
got the plan.
That's less than what our retirement age
I got
was
the plan right now. Here it is. Here it is. You ready? You guys
I'm
ready for
I'm
it?
ready. Yeah.
The cartels down in Mexico
Yeah.
that are doing all this business, right?
Yeah.
And they need to align with these motherfuckers. And everybody that's on board with revolution, we're going to pay you guys. It's going to be like a job. We're going to pay you guys well. They get everybody up to this because the cartels, they're going to win once these guys start overthrowing states.
Right.
Once they start turning over, now
Right.
cartel come up in here. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
That's the deal. That's how
Right.
they can do it. Hey, man, you can make $5,000 a month. You come work for us.
So think about that.
Think
too.
about that.
There's actually a lot of good research. There's some really good books about this too that talk about, how do they deal with the cartels? They go and they clip the head off, right?
Yeah.
We've
They go-
talked about
They
this.
take
man.
Chapo or whoever.
Yeah.
Right.
And what's the aftermath of that? Is all the lieutenants go to war, right?
Right.
So all the cartels in Mexico used to be organized under one. They basically all.
No, they
were on-
infiltrated
on the
that
same-
shit.
Yeah,
for
they
sure,
can't.
bro.
They can't allow
So
that.
they can't allow that, right?
Yeah,
no way.
So they're constant. Anytime,
like the Middle
anytime
East.
At angst.
anyone starts to get ahead or anybody starts working together, boom, they jump in there and they break it up, and it just same thing, divide and conquer, fragment, and they all go to
Right.
war with each other. Right. So it's not an accident that this is going on here in our cities, in Mexico. Everywhere in the world, you find sectarian conflict, whether it's over cartels, gangs, religious differences, whatever.
Well, because
All over the world, people who are essentially in the same position are fighting and killing each other.
But
right?
you bring up another interesting point that we didn't get to touch on much in this episode, but maybe if he comes back, we can talk. But the national concept, right? It's this idea. So you have racism. Yeah. The national aspect is a construct, and it's a fake identity that's supposed to hold all these sectarian groups together. But we're reaching the end. I'm getting the high sign. And obviously,
Go ahead.
no.
Keep
This
on going.
book, so Divide and Conquer.
Mike, I'm texting you.
Mike, he's texting you. Divide and Conquer, Race, Gangs, Identity, and Conflict by Robert Weide, Dr. Weide. And
I can't
he's a
hear you.
professor. Where are you a professor at?
Cal State LA.
Cal State LA, right? You want to get yours signed, you show up at office hours or whatever,
This
right?
is great, man. This discussion was awesome.
Right.
I think we only chopped off the first half. I think we got to come in. Let's talk some more.
Yeah, volume 2.
Volume
two.
2. Yeah.
Right on.
We'll get you on volume 2. I'm going to jump on your book, bro. I'm excited.
For sure.
I didn't get action at it, but yeah, now I am.
You can get it on Amazon.
And
Actually,
I love having
A
discussions
good
like
friend
this.
of yours hooked up a lot of the photos in there. Estevan Oriol.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like probably half the pictures in there are from him.
Estevan Oriol,
Yeah,
of course,
that's
the
the
greatest photographer of Los
Godfather
Angeles.
of my daughter. Yeah, of
Yeah,
my
oh,
son.
hey.
Yeah,
For
Godfather
sure.
of my son.
Right.
Yeah.
He's a good friend of mine too. Yeah, so he hooked me up with a bunch of pictures for the book. Appreciate that. The homie Alex Alonso, he has that Street Gangs TV or Street TV or whatever that is.
Okay.
I don't know too much about the podcast world, but anyways, he hooked up
Well,
a
you
bunch of
jumped
pictures.
right in today, my friend.
Yeah,
You jumped
you'd be
right into the
great.
podcast
Let me know
world.
next time, round 2.
Okay.
Yeah, for
We'll
sure.
get you on it. Listen, man. Awesome.
Awesome.
Man, Robert, thank you for coming down
My
today,
pleasure.
man.
Yeah,
it was really
thank
good to
you.
have you
Thank
down.
you.
Great discussion. Really, really intelligent talk today. Listen, check them out. Check out Divide and Conquer. Man, you got to... We'll put it up, too. We're going to fucking story this up on our thing. You need to
Yep.
go get that book. I'm going to start reading it tonight.
Yes.
And check us out Mondays and Thursdays, The Hard Luck Show.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And yeah, that's what I
it.
got. Cookies and vibes. Peep us out. But that's what I got. What you got?
I got Ovando Bowen LLP. We wear braids to court, except for today where I'm looking a little bit like dude from Journey. Let the hair out. Anyway, you want to win your fucking case? Sign up with us. We'll help you. Only civil, though. I don't do criminal. I saw you looking at me, Robert, but we do civil. But anyway.
Always looking for good lawyers.
Yeah, listen.
The best.
Rosenberg.
Oh,
Right? Criminal.
Criminal.
Rosenberg, one of the greatest
Yeah,
criminal
yeah,
attorneys
yeah.
of all time,
Yep.
right? That's where Johnny Cochran picked up all his tips, was from Rosenberg. All right, thank you. That's what I got. Salmon, anything?
I got Dragon Bags. Dragon Bags. DRAGGINBAGZ.com for all your cornhole bag needs.
Okay. Did you want a picture?
Yeah.
Okay. You want a picture book where people can buy it?
Or where they can go, or what?
It's on Amazon. It's anywhere that sells books. Barnes and Nobles. You could go to the press website. It's Temple University Press, but most people are used to Amazon, so it's on
Sure.
Amazon there.
There you go.
Right on. Any lectures coming up? The Great Professor?
No, fortunately, we're coming up on summer, so as soon as I get my grades turned in, I'm bouncing out to Puerto Rico for a little vacation with the
Nice.
family.
All right. Puerto Rico. Yeah,
for
very
sure.
good.
You heard it. Puerto Rico. Yeah, send us a photo from Puerto Rico, bro.
Yeah,
right?
send us
Please.
a picture from Puerto
For sure.
All right.
On the beach.
Yeah.
We are out of here. Peace from the Hard Luck Show.